If you'd asked me a week before Christmas what betrayal looked like, I might have said infidelity, a friend turning on you, maybe a coworker stealing credit. But I never imagined it would look like my own father smiling, healthy, and bouncing his grandson on his knee in the middle of a cheerful living room. He wasn't supposed to be healthy. 2 days earlier, Raymond, my father, had practically groaned into the phone about how weak he was. I just can't manage, Jules, he wheezed. You know how it is. Age, back problems, everything. I'd called to ask if he could watch Zoe overnight. Just one night. Daniel and I had a work event, and our usual sitter was out of town. But he said no. Couldn't lift. Couldn't focus. You wouldn't want me passing out with your daughter around, would you? So imagine me walking into his house with a Christmas card and an envelope of cash for utilities. Yes, I was still covering that and finding him laughing on the couch. Not alone, mind you. No. He had company, my brother Eric's kids, all three of them, running around, tossing stuffed animals, giggling, and there was Raymond, sitting tall, flushed, alive, and clearly not dying. My stomach dropped. For a moment, no one saw me. Then they did, and everything shifted. Julia? My father said, voice a touch too high. What a surprise! His face did that thing it always did, blank to bright, fast, and fake. Helen, my mother, sat by the window, knitting like a Victorian ghost. She didn't even look up. I didn't respond right away. I just stood there, frozen in my winter coat, the envelope of cash turning to ice in my fist. I scanned the room, Eric lounging on the recliner, half smirk in place. His kids playing like they live there, the whole scene staged like a photo for a family magazine. One I wasn't invited to. You told me you were too sick to watch Zoe, I said. It came out calm, but I could feel the storm behind my voice. I saw my father blink. A flicker of something: guilt? Panic? Amusement? Well, it's different with Eric's kids, he offered, casual as someone ordering lunch. He's doing it alone, after all. I laughed. Not a real laugh, a sharp, bitter one that scraped my throat on the way out. So because I have a husband, my daughter doesn't matter? I said. Because I'm not collapsing every week, I don't count? Julia, don't be dramatic, Eric chimed in. You're always looking for reasons to be offended. I turned to him, my voice still low. You mean reasons like being lied to? Raymond sighed and pressed a hand to his temple like I was the problem, as if I had inconvenienced him with my audacity. That was when it clicked. It wasn't about health. It was about control. He said no to watching Zoe because he didn't want me to see the truth, because as long as I thought he was weak and frail, I'd keep the checks coming, keep bailing them out, keep playing the reliable one. But I wasn't part of this family. I was their ATM, their fallback, their background noise. And in that moment, standing among blinking Christmas lights and chipped porcelain angels, I realized something inside me had snapped. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just said, got it. Then I turned around and walked out. I drove home in silence. No music, no podcast, just the sound of tires humming over pavement and my heart hammering in my ears. I could still hear Eric's smug voice in my head, still see Raymond's fake smile, still feel the heat of that living room wrapping around me like a lie. Daniel was waiting in the kitchen when I got home. Our daughter, Zoe, was already upstairs in pajamas, a little dinosaur printed across her chest. He took one look at my face and didn't say what happened. He said, tell me. So I did. I told him about the babysitting lie, about how Raymond had gone from too weak to lift a kettle to hosting Eric's 3 kids, like some jolly grandpa in a Christmas ad, about how Helen didn't say a word, about the envelope in my coat pocket that never made it to the coffee table. Daniel didn't interrupt. He just leaned back against the counter and let me speak. When I finally finished, I looked at him and said, the one thing I hadn't let myself say for years, I'm done. He nodded. No hesitation. Then let's be done. That night, I slept better than I had in months. And the next morning, I got to work. I made coffee, opened my laptop, logged into every account that had anything to do with my parents' lives, the ones they never acknowledged but always depended on. Utilities? Canceled? Rent auto payment? Gone? Grocery delivery? Goodbye. Raymond's medication plan I set up last year because he said the app was too confusing, disabled, it took less than an hour, and then I sent a single text. You're on your own now. Good luck. Blocked. That was it. No goodbye. No justifications. No openings for rebuttal. And oh, the chaos that followed. First, the calls. So many calls. Raymond must have hit redial until his fingers cramped. Then came the emails, long, sprawling guilt bombs. Helen sent one too. Shorter, colder. I hope you're proud of what you've done. Actually, I was. But the real masterstroke? They started calling Daniel. They tried to pull him in, appeal to his sense of decency, remind him of family values. But Daniel had watched this circus for years. He declined each call like he was swatting flies. Blocked, he'd say aloud, each time, and blocked again. And then came the piece de resistance. Raymond, in full dramatic form, took it to Facebook. One of those sappy, booby-trapped posts. A photo from years ago of me in high school, smiling beside him at some cookout. The caption? This Christmas, the first reflect on a daughter who's turned away from the people who raised her. We gave everything, sacrificed everything, and now we are left in the dark. The reactions flooded in. Some sympathized. Of course they did. He's good at this, playing the sorrowful father. Others tagged me, asking for my side. But I didn't engage. Instead, I posted my own response. Simple, calm, actual. For those who've asked, I financially supported my parents for years. I asked my father to babysit my daughter for one night. He said he was too sick. Days later, I found him watching my brother's kids just fine. I was done being used. I didn't need to say more. The comments handled it for me. Old neighbors chimed in, people who'd seen Raymond walking Helen's dog, gardening, even painting his fence. Friends messaged privately. Distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years sent words of support. Some even shared their own stories about being the backup child. But the best part? Eric. Golden boy Eric, who'd built his whole image around being the overwhelmed single dad, took a hit. People noticed his frequent weekend getaways, the new gaming setup he'd bragged about online, and suddenly his struggling narrative didn't quite stick. It was like watching a tower of cards slowly collapse in the wind, and I wasn't even the one blowing. 3 days passed, no messages, no posts, just a strange, thick silence. It was eerie, honestly. I thought maybe the message finally sank in, that they'd accepted my resignation from the role of designated provider. But people like Raymond don't process rejection like normal humans. They see it as a challenge. So when the doorbell rang on a Thursday evening, I didn't have to look through the peephole to know who it was. But I did anyway. Raymond and Helen, standing on my front porch, like a scene from a family drama no one wanted to watch. Helen looked composed, her usual silence wrapping around her like a shawl. Raymond? He looked older than he had 3 days ago, more desperate. His coat was too thin for the cold. His hands fidgeted in and out of his pockets. For a second, I considered pretending we weren't home, just walking away. But I wasn't afraid of them anymore, so I opened the door and stood there, blocking the entrance. Raymond's face lit up, overacting as usual. Jules, he said. Thank God. Can we come in? No, I said. Simple, final, he blinked. Okay, can we talk at least? You're talking. Helen glanced away like she wished she were anywhere else. Raymond cleared his throat, stepping forward slightly. I didn't move. We didn't come here to fight, he said, all warm voice and wounded eyes. Your mother and IWERE struggling. The rent's due. The electric bill's overdue. We didn't think you'd actually cut everything off. And yet, I said, arms crossed, here we are. He gave me that look. The one I'd seen my entire childhood. Like I was overreacting, like I was cruel for calling out the truth. Come on, sweetheart, he said. We're your family. You don't want us living in the dark, do you? There it was. The guilt trip. The manipulation. The carefully crafted appeal to emotion with none of the accountability. You have options, I said calmly. You could get a smaller place. Apply for assistance. Eric could finally contribute, or crazy idea you could get a part-time job. Like I did when I was 20 and you told me college was a luxury. Raymond's smile cracked. Helen looked away. This is cruel, he said quietly. After everything we've done for you, I tilted my head. What exactly have you done for me? He opened his mouth. Closed it. You made me think I owed you for existing. You made me pay for years while Eric coasted. You lied to me. Let me believe you were sick. Watched me juggle a job, a toddler, and your bills, and you still couldn't show up for me the one time I asked. Raymond sighed, his tone sharpening. We're not perfect, Julia, but this is throwing us to the wolves. I stepped back, but not to invite them in, just to breathe. You made your choices, I said. Now you live with them. He really looked at me for the first time in a long while. I think he realized then that something had shifted, that I wasn't the girl who brought them groceries after double shifts, that I wasn't scared of being called ungrateful anymore. I was done chasing love that only came with receipts. I'm sorry, Helen said suddenly. It was soft, almost a whisper. Raymond turned toward her, surprised. She met my eyes. I'm sorry we let it get this far, she said. I didn't respond. I couldn't, because part of me still didn't know what to do with softness from her. She had always been the silent accomplice, the one who watched it happen. And sometimes silence feels like betrayal louder than any scream. I hope things get better for you, I said finally, voice steady, but they'll have to do so without me. Raymond's shoulders slumped. Helen just nodded once, and then I shut the door. I stood there for a while, back pressed against the wood, heart pounding, but not from fear, from release. For the first time in my life, I had drawn a line, not in sand, in stone, no more manipulation, no more emotional blackmail, no more, but they're your parents. That night, Daniel found me in the hallway, arms crossed, tears drying on my cheeks I didn't even know I'd let fall. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't have to. He just pulled me into his chest and whispered, "You did it." And I had. The next few weeks were shockingly calm. Zoe had her first beach trip. We taught her how to build sandcastles and dig for shells. I got promoted, finally had the headspace to focus at work. Daniel and I toured houses in a new district. We started talking about planting a garden, starting fresh. But of course, peace doesn't sit still because people like Raymond don't go quietly. You'd think once the drama was done, people would move on, let you live in peace. But gossip, like mold, always finds a way to bloom in damp corners. 2 weeks after Raymond and Helen stood on my doorstep, the whispers began. At first, it was subtle. A coworker stopped by my desk with that tone sympathetic, but curious. "Hey, I heard from someone in the neighborhood group that your parents are going through something. You okay?" I smiled, nodded. "Yep, I'm good," but I wasn't surprised. I knew the performance was far from over. By the end of that week, my Aunt Rachel called. She doesn't do small talk. She answered on the first ring and skipped every pleasantry. "They're telling people you snapped," she said. I paused. Define snapped. That you're having some sort of breakdown, that Daniel's worried, that you abandoned your father in his time of need. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair. Let me guess. Raymond's words? Not Helen's? "Oh, he's leading the parade," she said, dry as sandpaper. "Helen barely speaks to anyone. But apparently, he's taken to calling old friends, people from church, even distant cousins. Says you've always been unstable, that you're money obsessed." I laughed. Once. A hard, tired laugh. He really can't handle losing control, can he? Rachel didn't laugh. No, he can't. She was quiet for a second. Then, they're being evicted next month. I didn't say anything. Raymond tried to get his job back at the hardware store. They passed. Eric, he's asking around for loans. But people are starting to figure things out. A twinge of something stirred in my stomach. Not guilt. Not quite. Just sadness. For the story I used to think we had. "I know it's not your problem anymore," she said, gentler now. "It's not," I replied. But my voice didn't sound as certain as I wanted. That night, after Daniel went to bed and Zoe was fast asleep, I sat by the window and watched the neighborhood wind down. One porch light turned off. Then another. A wind chime rattled somewhere down the block. I wasn't second-guessing myself. I knew I did the right thing. But the ache of what could have been still echoed. The kind of ache that doesn't shout it, lingers in silence. The next afternoon, the doorbell rang. Zoe was napping. Daniel was on a call upstairs. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find Helen, alone. She looked different, less composed, less shielded. "Hi," she said quietly. I blinked. "What are you doing here?" She clutched her purse like it might fly away. I didn't tell Raymond I was coming. He'd lose it if he knew. I didn't move, just held the doorframe like a barrier. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Just a few minutes." Against my better judgment, I stepped back and nodded toward the living room. We sat across from each other on opposite ends of the couch. The silence between us felt like a third person in the room. She stared at her hands for a long time. Then, softly, I owe you more than just silence. I tilted my head, unsure where this was going. I let him run the show for so long. I thought keeping the peace was love, that if I just stayed quiet, everything would stay together. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear the whole thing for once. I watched what he did to you, to Eric. The favoritism, the manipulation. I told myself it wasn't my place, that it wasn't abuse, just imbalance. She looked up, and for the first time in years, I saw something real in her face. Grief. Not performance, not deflection. You deserved more, she said. I should have said something. I should have stopped him. I should have backed you. The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they fixed anything, but because she'd never said them before. Not even close. I don't know how to fix any of this, she added. But I needed to say that out loud, and not just in an email. I folded my hands in my lap. Let the moment breathe. I appreciate you saying that, I finally said. She nodded, a small exhale leaving her body. He won't change, Julia. He still thinks you owe him. Still thinks Eric's the victim. Does Eric? I asked. She paused. Maybe not anymore. I didn't know what to do with that. Is he still living with you? I asked. She shook her head. No. We wore out our welcome. Eric asked us to leave a month in, said we were too much. I couldn't help it. I let out a short, bitter laugh. Welcome to my world, Helen smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. As she stood to leave, she lingered by the door. I don't expect anything, she said. I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see you. And with that, she left. I stood in the doorway long after she was gone. Her apology didn't erase decades of silence. It didn't undo birthdays missed, calls ignored, moments where I begged to be seen. But it was something. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. Some endings don't arrive with a bang, just a quiet vibration on your phone. It happened on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Zoe was squealing with delight on the swing set Daniel and I had built in our new backyard, her legs flailing in the air like she could kick the clouds. I had dirt under my fingernails from planting spring flowers. I felt grounded, unbothered, light. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. It's Eric. Can we talk? My breath caught not from fear, not even from anger, just surprise. I hadn't spoken to Eric since the day I walked out of Raymond's living room. That smirk on his face as I stood there, unraveling years of manipulation, had been burned into my memory. I never imagined we'd have anything to say to each other again. I stood there, staring at the message, the sun hot on the back of my neck. Eventually, I typed back. When and where? We met the following Monday at a cafe near my office. A small, unassuming place where nobody would know our faces or our family's twisted history. Eric was already there when I arrived. He looked different, not broken, not smug, just tired in a way that seemed to stretch from his bones to his soul. His hoodie was wrinkled, his hair slightly unkempt. There were no jokes waiting on his lips, no flippant commentary, just silence. Thanks for coming, he said, eyes barely meeting mine. I nodded and sat across from him. Neither of us touched the coffee in front of us. I'm not here to explain anything, he began. I'm here because I owe you an apology. I waited. I didn't make it easy. You were right, he said, about all of it. Still, I stayed quiet. I let them treat you like a backup plan. I let them dump everything on you. I let Raymond turn you into the responsible one, while I got to be the easy one. And I coasted on it for years. He took a breath. I used to tell myself you had it all together, that you didn't need help, that you liked being in control. But that was just me excusing being selfish. My jaw clenched, but I didn't interrupt. When they moved in with me, he said, I thought it would be temporary, thought they'd help out. You know, watch the kids, clean, maybe cook once in a while. He laughed bitterly. Instead, Raymond criticized everything. Zoe was too loud. My apartment was too small. My parenting was weak. Helen just watched. He started giving my daughter backhanded comments about her weight. I snapped. My eyebrows rose. Yeah, he nodded. Turns out I have a line. Took long enough. I heard you kicked them out, I said. I did, he replied, and I meant it. We were both quiet for a while. The cafe hummed softly around us, a soundtrack of espresso machines and light conversation. I thought you'd never talk to me again, he admitted. I thought so too. He gave a sad smile. I miss Zoe? I blinked. She remembers you. She asks about Jack and Emma sometimes. His face softened. They miss her too. There it was. The thing neither of us had said aloud, the real reason we were sitting here. Not just to patch up broken history, but maybe to give our kids something better. Look, I said, finally breaking the pause. I'm not going to pretend everything can go back to how it was. Too much happened. Too much was said and not said. He nodded. I get that. But maybe, I added, we don't have to go backward. Maybe we just start from here. Eric swallowed hard and nodded again. I'd like that. The tension between us didn't disappear, but it shifted, changed shape, became something less jagged, something that could maybe be worn down with time and effort. We talked a little longer, neutral stuff, work, the housing market, Jack's obsession with dinosaurs. I told him about Zoe's new favorite game, setting up her dolls in a courtroom and holding fake custody hearings. He actually laughed at that. When we stood to leave, he turned to me just before I walked away. Thanks for standing up, he said. If you hadn't, I don't know that I'd have ever seen it. I didn't say you're welcome, but I nodded. And somehow that felt like enough. That evening, Daniel and I grilled dinner in the backyard. Zoe ran around barefoot, chasing shadows, laughing like the world owed her nothing and everything all at once. Did it go okay? Daniel asked. I thought about it. Yeah, I said. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Later that night, as I tucked Zoe into bed, she wrapped her little arms around my neck and whispered, Mommy, are you happy? I pulled back just far enough to look her in the eye. Yes, I said, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. I'm really, really happy. And for the first time in my entire adult life, I didn't have to convince myself it was true. I just knew.